In the shadows of the Dallas skyscrapers are places where the not-so-fortunate do whatever's necessary to survive. One such area in southern Dallas is known as Oak Cliff, a place where abandoned properties serve as homes and where iron bars protect the homes of some of the more fortunate who live nearby. Gangs, drugs, and prostitution are rampant. In 1990, Oak Cliff prostitutes were a regular sight on almost every street corner. And they, like the rest of Oak Cliff, had seen better times.
These were not high-dollar escorts. These were drug addicts, sexually abused women who would do flatbacks, which is their phrase for straight sex, for $25. Enough to get a hit of crack, which was big back in that era. And then as soon as they got high and the high came down, they would get back on the street to do another flatback. It was a miserable, dirty profession.
Well, unfortunately, these would be the bottom of the barrel type. They're not your pretty call girls. They are your drug prostitutes, crack prostitution. That was the main drug, crack.
The so-called whore hotels of the area did a big business. Through bulletproof windows, prostitutes and their clients would pay by the hour to use dirty, flea-bitten rooms to turn tricks. Hundreds of women of all ages, backgrounds, and races, and almost all addicted to drugs, worked the streets of Oak Cliff, got arrested, got released, and went back to working the streets again. It was a rough, squalid life. A life in which violence was an occupational hazard.
In that world, prostitutes always talked about a client jumping bad on them. And that was when they would get assaulted. It was just part of the business. The Johns that came through were from the same sort of socioeconomic world as they were. This was not in any way glamorous. It was not in any way appealing. It was this dirty business.
In 1990, it was particularly dirty, particularly violent. Dallas had a record number of murders, an average of almost 2 a day, making it at the time one of the most dangerous cities in America. On the night of December 13th, 1990, 33-year-old Mary Pratt, an Oak Cliff prostitute, became the latest victim. She was found sprawled on a street in the city's south suburbs, dead from a .44 caliber bullet wound to the back of the head.
Mary Pratt was found in the middle of the street, almost totally disrobed. She did have some type of a blouse pulled up above her breast. To us, she was displayed. The killer wanted us to see her in that position.
She was splayed out. She was nude, partially nude, and put in a very unflattering position on the side of the road for anyone to see. And to most trained police officers, this is sending a message, look what I did.
The only lead in the case was a neighbor who said that shortly before dawn, she heard a car door slam shut and then the car drive away. Street prostitutes would meet with 10 to 20 men a day, which meant a huge pool of potential suspects.
It was clear that she had been murdered somewhere else and dumped here. There's very little physical evidence, no eyewitnesses.
The autopsy was performed by forensic pathologist Dr. Elizabeth Peacock.
Dallas had over 500 homicides in that year alone, so it was just another one of many homicides.
The track marks on the victim's arm told Dr. Peacock she was dealing with a drug addict, not unusual among prostitutes. But what she found next was unlike anything she'd seen before.
Everything was routine about that case until I went to examine her eye color.
She opened one eye, and then she opened another eye, and there was this infinitely long silence. And she finally said, "My God, the eyeballs are gone."
I would say that there had to be some skill involved. There was no disruption of the eyelids overlying the eye sockets.
This was not an operation you learn in medical school. The eyeballs were cut so precisely that they had to get the knife underneath the eyelid and then cut the 6 major muscle groups that connected the eyeball to the socket. and then shut the eyes in such a way that you couldn't even tell there was scarring around those eyes. She was so dumbfounded at what she saw because there was nothing in a textbook that even showed anything like this.
A rape kit done on Mary Pratt found no semen. Some foreign hairs were found on her body, but there were no other clues except for the extreme violence of the crime.
The killer who did this, or killers who did this, at least in their mind, had a high degree of intelligence. And they're very dangerous people, very dangerous people.
2 months later, police had another victim, 27-year-old Susan Peterson. She, too, was an Oak Cliff prostitute.
She was one of the most beautiful white prostitutes in that world, and she was tough. She cussed out clients. She didn't let anybody mess with her. She even cussed out the cops that wandered that neighborhood. She was a rugged, fierce woman.
Peterson had been shot 3 times with a .44 caliber pistol in the back of her head. An empty condom package was found near the body. Questions about whether these 2 murders were related were answered at the autopsy.
Dr. Peacock went through the same routine and gets to the eyeballs and opens them up and gasps. She's the first one to realize that a serial killer is on the loose.
I kind of got a little bit of a chill on the back of my neck. I felt like the hair on the back of my neck stood up a little bit.
Again, no semen or other biological material was found. Before Susan Peterson turned to prostitution, she was an ensign in the U.S. Navy. Her military experience made her more street savvy than the other prostitutes. Inevitably, police speculated, who would want to cut out a woman's eyes, and why?
Sheer sense of panic on the street. Now, for the white prostitutes, the black prostitutes at the time thought they were okay. They thought that he was just killing the white prostitutes, so they were still out there working full force. They were going at it because they just knew that the only thing this killer was attacking was overweight white females with long brown hair.
Dallas officials called the FBI in Washington, D.C. They ran a check on their database, the world's most extensive source of information on violent offenders, and found no record of a killer surgically removing the eyes of his victims. The FBI created a behavioral profile of the Dallas killer. Such a profile is part science, part intuition. Using information gathered from the crime scenes and criminal histories, profilers try to identify important characteristics about the killer. Roy Hazelwood is a profiler who examined thousands of cases in his career with the FBI.
Sexual sadists believe that all women, heterosexual sadists, believe that all women are bitches, whores, and sluts. That includes his mother, his grandmother, his wife, his girlfriends.
But that wasn't all. The way the killer displayed the bodies was intended to send a message.
These were the killer's trophies, and he displayed them on the side of the road where all could see. He didn't try to hide the bodies. He didn't try to hide his handiwork. He was very proud of his handiwork.
The profile suggested that the perpetrator was a white male in his mid-30s, possibly a resident of Oak Cliff, with an educational background in the sciences. The FBI predicted he would be respected by those who knew him, would be physically fit, probably had friends in law enforcement, and was driving an older model pickup truck. They also predicted he would strike again.
I think that the killer was reacting with, I'll use a term that's probably inappropriate, glee, extremely happy at the amount of attention that's being generated by his crime. I think he had a sense of power that was being satisfied with this attention. He held the community, he himself held the community in fear. He himself could determine whether or not he was going to kill again. He could determine who he was going to kill.
Flyers were posted throughout the city telling women to be on the lookout. The public was informed, but not told everything.
You don't want to scare the public. I mean, you have to notify them, you have to let them know what's going on, but you don't want to terrify the city of Dallas and say, we have an eyeball killer out there.
They never mentioned that there was any kind of eyeball removal. But what happened was that some detective leaked to a reporter that there was a significant facial mutilation. That was the phrase. And that was enough to send this story careening through the media locally. So that soon there was this kind of Jack the Ripper mentality going on. It was instant how quickly the media frenzy developed.
Police staked out motels in the Oak Cliff area and checked the license plates of the men who frequented the area. Female officers who fit what appeared to be the killer's taste dressed as prostitutes in an attempt to lure him in. But this turned up nothing. Then, a break. An Oak Cliff prostitute, Veronica Rodriguez, came forward saying she was with Mary Pratt on the night she was killed.
Veronica stated that she and Mary Pratt had a threesome with the killer. She stated that he took them out into a vacant field and they did their job on him. Both of them did.
But after the trick, something went wrong. As Veronica was getting dressed, Mary Pratt got into an argument with the customer. And she watched in horror as Mary Pratt was shot in the head. Veronica Rodriguez said she ran through the field to a nearby home. Veronica described the attacker as a middle-aged white male with salt and pepper hair who was driving a white pickup truck. It was quite a story, one police were hesitant to believe.
Veronica Rodriguez was the classic crack-addicted prostitute. She had done drugs for so long that the cops used to say that her brain was fried. She was a notorious liar, or she went off into these kind of dementia-like statements that no one could understand.
Veronica Rodriguez was an extreme drug addict, and she had no control over herself. In fact, she was one of the most brain-fried individuals that I had come in contact with at times. There were times when she was lucid, but 90% of the time she was just doped up out of her mind.
Since police didn't believe Veronica's story, the case stalled. On March 10th, 1991, police had a third victim. This time, displayed directly in front of an elementary school. Again, a condom package was found next to the body.